look, controversial opinion, but this is the best time of the year. Fall weather is here. The Toronto International Film Festival is back. Somehow, Beetlejuice is back. I don't know how that happened. Today on the show, the group chat is here. We have a lot to talk about. Let's get to it. I'm Alamin Abdul Mahmoud, and this is Commotion. This is a very special edition of the Commotion group chat because it is TIFF season in Toronto. Particularly, it's the 49th Toronto International Film Festival, if you can believe it. It is our chance to get really close to all the movies that are going to be, for sure, dominating all of awards season. And to talk through all of it with us, we've got two of the busiest critics in town. Simonpillai is here. Teri Hart is here. Yeah, welcome, y'all. How's it going? How are we feeling?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I love what I love about TIFF season for both of you is like each one of you, I'll say like, how was your day? And you'll say, I saw 8 movies yesterday. Like that's roughly how this goes for you. And I love that. Thank you for taking time out of your very, very busy schedule to be here. Thank you so much, you guys. What a delight.
Happy to be here.
Well, all right. Before we get to TIFF, we're going to get to TIFF. But first, if you guys don't mind, I would like to start us off with this.
Work all night and a drink a rum. Daylight come and we want go home. Stack banana till the morning come. Daylight come and we want go home.
That is Day-O. I wasn't going to do that on the radio, but then I did it. Also known as the Banana Boat song, a huge hit for Harry Belafonte, of course, in 1956. But if you grew up in the late 80s, you know this song because it's going to be forever associated with the 1988 Tim Burton classic, Beetlejuice. Somehow, 36 years later, there's a sequel, Beetlejuice, because what else could you expect it to be called? It's back. Winona Ryder is back. The undead ghoul himself, Beetlejuice, which is once again played by Michael Keaton, is back. Only this time, we've got adult Lydia, who's the character that Winona plays. She's searching for her teenage daughter, played by Jenna Ortega. Rad, look, before we even get into the new movie, we'll get there in a moment. Do you want to maybe remind us why Beetlejuice was like such a massive hit in the late 80s and maybe how it changed the game as far as like what we think of children's movies go?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think first of all, it was a game changer because it introduced us to the Tim Burton of it all, right? Like this was the personal expression of who Tim Burton was, because Tim Burton was that goth kid in Burbank, in the suburbs, who, you know, like he was Lydia Dietz, basically, the guy who felt more comfortable with ghouls and goblins than any other people, right? So that was that aspect of it, and you see that in his aesthetic. But also, like, what made way for Tim Burton, I think, is this post PG-13 era, so to speak, right? Like, because this is just a few years after PG-13 was introduced in Hollywood, right? Like, 1984, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Gremlins. Parents are triggered and they're pearl clutching that their little kids saw these movies. So
and the movie rating system comes in. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, PG-13 kicks in. You need a place between PG and R. And so all of a sudden the studios are now making content for this demographic, for the like kind of the tweens and stuff who can, so you get movies like Monster Squad and stuff. And I think that is what made the way for, I mean, Beetlejuice is not PG-13. Beetlejuice is PG, but it's a movie that could have been PG-13. It should have been PG-13. But it's basically like that system made way for a Tim Burton, the guy who got fired from Disney in 1984 for making sure kids films that were too ghoulish now can, express himself in a movie like Beetlejuice.
Yeah, I would say it worked out just fine for Tim Burton. Teri, can I just ask you, you rewatched the original Beetlejuice recently. Does it still feel like it's a groundbreaking film right now?
I mean, yeah, you look at that movie from 36 years ago, and you can see how it was completely an eye-popping special effects extravaganza. I mean, this was really an exercise in a time that special effects were, reaching a new height. And we were seeing things on screen that people had never seen before and could never imagine before. Not just the Tim Burton aesthetic, but actually what he was doing. Like that, just in the beginning, third of the movie when Alec Baldwin is holding his own head, that in 1988 was like, what is happening? How did they do that? And so I think that really was a thing. And then rewatching it as an adult, this had never crossed my mind before, but the original Beetlejuice was doing something with content that we hadn't seen before. They were giving kids and families credit to talk about death, to talk about childless couples, to talk about, divorced parents even, I mean, Winona Ryder is the stepdaughter of Catherine O'Hara. And we were not seeing that in family movies, in children's content at all back then. And we're not seeing it now either. I mean, those kinds of subjects are the subjects that we associate, ironically, with Pixar movies, with animated movies now. We don't do family movies that cover these. So the original Beetlejuice, I mean, I don't tend to think of 80s movies as being ahead of their time. But then when I go back and I watch this, I'm like, they were really doing something and saying something that we hadn't seen before.
Okay, so now we get to this new Beetlejuice, and I want to talk about it. But first, let's have a listen to this.
First of all, I want you two kids to know this is a safe space, okay? Feel free to express yourself. Don't be afraid. I sense there's an enabler here, but we'll get to that.
You're a figment of my imagination.
Really? Is this a figment of your imagination?
Man, Michael Keaton, it's truly, like, no matter what other role he takes on, I will just look into his eyes and go like, that's Beetlejuice right there. Rad, of course, that is Michael Keaton back for the sequel of Beetlejuice. It is called Beetlejuice. How does this new movie move the Beetlejuice story forward, Rad?
Well, I think it's less about moving it forward and more about taking it back, right? I mean, because that's what
we're doing here. Yeah.
I mean, this is Lydia Dietz returning to the scene of the crime 36 years later, right?
Yeah, that's the Winona character.
The Winona character, and I mean, the instigating factor here is her father died, so she's back for a funeral. She's got a daughter in tow named Astrid, who is played by Jenna Ortega, who is just so perfectly cast because she feels like she belongs in the Tim Burton universe. Jenna Ortega, so basically, like Astrid ends up getting sucked into the afterlife. Lydia needs to save her. She enlists Beetlejuice to help her. Meanwhile, Beetlejuice's wife shows up to suck his soul, so he's dead as opposed to just dead.
Sure,
that's played by Monica Bellucci. A whole mess of plots, and the whole while Catherine O'Hara is there in the background, just being awesome. Is what it is.
Okay, so sometimes we get sequels, Rad, that are like someone reached into the intellectual property shelf and said, what needs a refresh? And sometimes we get sequels that feel like, you know what, we did need this, and it does serve a purpose. Where are you at on Beetlejuice?
Okay. Listen, I'm going to go against my own grain. Like you know me. I'm typically not about the cynical franchise things and stuff. And not that this movie ain't a mess. It is, absolutely is, maybe as much of a mess as the original. But there was something very comforting about this movie, especially comforting in terms of going back to this aesthetic and stuff, but also comforting as Tim Burton being able to return to his roots. Like I said, Tim Burton is Lydia Dietz. The plot of this story is Lydia Dietz has sold out, is now a ghost hunter on reality television, and she's got all this anxiety and she needs to exercise her demons. That's what Tim Burton is doing. This guy has just, he's coming out of that soul-sucking live-action Disney remake franchise business, and he's returning to his roots. And so he's exercising his own demons in this movie. So like there's something comforting in all of that. And I'm kind of, it got me sentimental.
Rad Simonpillai taking comfort in a franchise film. Teri, I've seen everything. I've now seen everything. What do you think of the movie?
Well, I'm going to add something to that list because for the first time in Commotion history, I am going to have snark that Rad Simonpillai does not have.
Oh my God. Hell is frozen over. Go ahead.
I mean, I agree with Rad on one thing, that this movie is a mess. There are so many plot lines. There are so many things that get thrown in there and nothing pays off. Rad mentions Monica Bellucci, who plays Beetlejuice's first wife, and she is doing this soul-sucking thing. The special effect, they stole it directly from the Dementors in the Harry Potter franchise. It looks exactly the same. And so I got no time for that. I'm wondering, it's the same studio. It's Warner Brothers. So do they own the IP of the special effect?
They might.
Just you know what we can do here? Use the Dementors. Anyway, there is so much going on, and none of it actually amounts to anything. So that nostalgia that you want to feel, that care that you want to feel, just never, ever happens. And it also robs you of the fun that these characters should be bringing to the screen. And for goodness sakes, why are they releasing it September 6th? It's literally happening on Halloween. There's a wedding in the movie on Halloween. Why are they releasing it September 6th?
Because the 6-week theatrical window means it's on VOD for Halloween. Sorry.
Deadpool and Wolverine is barely going to play for 6 weeks. There's not a movie in the past 4 years that has played for 6 weeks theatrically. What they're doing is they're going to have it so that it's on Max. It's Warner Brothers, so that it's on Max for Halloween, the way we used to see horror movies released in August so that they would be on DVD come Halloween. That's what we're seeing here. They're servicing their streaming service.
And I appreciate you guys talking about the future of this film, but I'm kind of rooted in the present, which is I'm trying to orient myself around a world where Rad took comfort in a movie and then Teri came into the place and said, actually, I don't think so. That movie's a mess. For people who are familiar with the two of you in your usual positions, I think this is going to give them some kind of, I feel like I'm displaced in another dimension, We've
entered Beetlejuice territory.
Beetlejuice territory. My name is Alamin Abdul Mahmoud, and you're listening to Commotion. The group chat is here. Teri, Hart is here. Rad Simonpillai is here. Okay, that's the big movie in theaters, but we are going to shift and talk about the biggest movie event in the world right now, and that is the Toronto International Film Festival.
First thing we climb a tree, and maybe then we talk, or sit silent.
Okay, can I just tell you, this was a gigantic, Tragically Hip sing-along that happened after the premiere of this new Tragically Hip docuseries at TIFF. I was at both. I saw the first bit of the series, and everyone in the theater was crying. And then at the sing-along, and then again, everyone at the sing-along was crying. To me, this is a bit of the magic of TIFF. Rad, Teri, this is where I get to tell people that as a festival takes over the city, you two are running over, seeing, movie after movie after movie. Teri, I think you mentioned that on Thursday you saw 8 movies. The three of us, so Teri and Rad and I, are going to be doing a special bonus podcast at Commotion that we're calling TIFF in 12. It is going to be a daily 12-minute TIFF podcast that will start dropping in the Commotion podcast feed starting Monday. I'm really excited to be doing this with the two of you. I'm so glad that we're doing it. It's going to be a good time, I think.
I'm just mad that you're going to take away my screening time to come talk to you. You pulled this in the past.
I did.
And it's
Yeah. We're monopolizing all your, for 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Every single one of those
You try
days.
scheduling TIFF and you see how easy that 12 minutes is.
And I think
King Street will be...
Go ahead.
King Street will be saved from hearing Rad and I yell at each other, and we'll save it for the Commotion bonus podcast.
Which honestly, if anyone has not experienced that, it is truly a delight. But also, let's root ourselves in the moment a little bit, Teri, because I think it's important to set the scene here. I want to talk about the state of the festival itself. This is the 49th year of the festival. But also, like a lot of arts organizations, TIFF has faced some big challenges, I think, in recent years. How would you gauge the festival's health going into this year?
So out of those 49 years, I've covered it. This is my 29th film festival that I've covered.
Incredible.
So I've really seen a huge change within the festival. And I would say for the first 45, 46 years of the festival, it was just growth, growth, growth. And I don't just mean growth in terms of the number of movies that are playing at the festival. That's not the sign of success. The sign of success for a film festival is how the industry views the film festival. And I think that we did see for those first 45 or 46 years, bigger premieres. I mean, just a few years ago, we had Steven Spielberg come to TIFF for the first time. We were still having those firsts happening that were really, really exciting. And I think it's fair to say now that TIFF is experiencing a bit of middle age identity crisis. And it's not 100% the festival's fault at all. And in fact, I would say very little of it is the festival's fault. The fault lies in how different the movie-going experience is for people. What people are willing to think of as a theatrical experience. They'll go to and spend $17 for Beetlejuice, no matter what I say about it, probably.
Yeah.
But do they want to go and see, Baby Girl or Matt and Mar? Do they want to go and see something that is more considered a quote unquote festival film, that is the human experience, that is discovering something new about human beings?
It's called cinema, Teri. You can say the word cinema.
Cinema.
The art of movie films. Yes, that's one of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so the festival is struggling with what people think of as a theatrical experience, versus what people think of as a streaming experience.
Yeah.
And so they're evolving a little bit, and that's their job to evolve. They've got a new program called Primetime where we're seeing TV shows in that program.
Yeah.
But it will be really interesting to see how they continue to evolve with how the temperature has changed for the movie-going audience.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, Rad, is that like in the calendar, TIFF arrives on the heels of two other big festivals, which is Venice and Telluride. So it has like some pretty significant competition because all those festivals compete in terms of trying to land a premiere. They're all trying to say, make your North American premiere at this festival, not those other festivals. And last month in Vanity Fair, the head of the Venice Festival, which is Alberto Barrera, he claimed that his event has become the festival of choice for anyone who wants to make their movie an Oscar contender because, and I quote here, there is almost no press in Toronto, apart from trade publications. I'm looking at two press right now who might have some feelings about that, Alberto. How well is TIFF holding up against his competitors, you think, Red?
Well, first of all, can we just acknowledge that Alberto is a troll? Okay, like this guy is always
he has an interest
taking shots.
Yeah,
he has
an
he's
interest.
always taking shots.
Yeah,
I don't know how Cameron Bailey keeps his composure with this dude always like trying to saying the stuff he says. He's been dragging us into this competition for a decade. Yeah.
Hang on, but I just should explain the names here. Alberto is the head of Venice, but also Cameron Bailey is the head of the Toronto International Film Festival. And they might be friendly, but they are definitely competitors. They are absolutely competitors in any way. Continue, sorry.
It's like Kendrick and Drake across the pond. Here's the thing. So Alberto, the whole no press here, maybe there's more European press in Venice because it's a closer jaunt, but Toronto has more North American press because it's a closer jaunt. Yeah. That's one thing. And then he's showing off about the world premieres thing. Like the whole world premiere competition is that's great and dandy. Like Venice gets its world premieres, then Telluride gets its world premieres. So does Toronto. Toronto has world premieres too. It's got Night Bitch with Amy Adams. You got the new Amy Adams movie, y'all. You got the new Angelina Jolie, the new J-Lo movie. These are world premieres that Toronto gets. On top of, it also gets those movies that premiered in the previous festivals. We're getting sloppy seconds on those other ones too, where, and the stars are arriving too. So if you think about it, yeah, sure, there's this competition and everyone's getting their share of what's a world premiere, but Toronto gets kind of the best of both worlds. And as a public-facing festival, I don't think the audience cares that the stars are in Venice first. They just care that the stars are here now. So the public, the audience that's attending the festival, they just loving all the choices and the experience they get to have. And Toronto's not suffering at all for this world premiere competition.
Yeah, Jacob Elordi, if you want to hang out with me after hanging out in Venice, I'm totally okay with that. I'm just putting that out there. Okay, you just mentioned Night Bitch. I want to play a bit of the trailer for that movie.
I'm never going to be smart, happy, or thin ever again. Oh, and I'm pretty sure I'm turning into a dog.
You're so funny.
Teri, look, I have tried every which way to get a ticket to one of the many screenings of Night Bitch, and it's just unavailable. It is the most talked about movie of the festival. Tell us about why this movie is such a big deal at this festival.
Amy Adams, she's been nominated
Nice.
like a trillion times for Academy Awards.
Yeah.
She always delivers a great performance and she makes interesting choices. On top of the fact that this is directed by Mariel Heller, who not only directed Can You Ever Forgive Me, which had a really great, interesting kind of bite to it, no pun intended, or Night Bitch.
Yeah.
But she also directed A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which
Very moving film.
So fantastic with Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. And so this is a director that does a variety of different things, and what she really nails each time is tone. And I think that Night Bitch is going to be about this tone of Amy Adams playing a kind of frustrated, overworked, stay-at-home mom who is trying to find a break in life somewhere, anywhere, and she may or may not be turning into a dog.
It's an adaptation of a very successful Rachel Yoder killer novel. That novel was like very acclaimed by, and then when it was announced that, it was being adapted and Amy Adams was playing this character, everyone was like, how do you play a character of a mom who's turning into a dog at night? How do you do that? And there's one actor in the world I want to see do that, and her name is Amy Adams. Like, that's exactly the correct kind of casting. It's why you can't get a ticket to this thing.
Yeah, I'm lobbing it out there too. I don't have a ticket. There's a press and industry screening tomorrow morning at 9:15, so I'm going to try and get there at 8. I don't know if that's going to be early enough to get in.
Yeah.
But if anybody has a ticket, both Elamine and I are looking for Rad, do you have a ticket?
I don't even think I have the time to see it. It's just, again, the scheduling. I have no time for Amy Adams. It's just crushing me.
So sorry you're busy, Rad. Okay, what's a movie that's playing at TIFF that you sort of expect is going to be on everyone's lips when we get into award season?
Well, I mean, I think like the award season movie, the pedigreed award season movie is probably Conclave, which, this is the movie where Ray Fiennes and Stanley Tucci, they're playing men of the cloth during a papal election, and there's a conspiracy. It's adapted from a best-selling page turner, very elegantly shot by the guy who made All Quiet on the Western Front, that remake that was really, really fancy. But I wasn't actually really high on this movie. Like, I think it's just kind of like a functional thriller that is dressed up to look very compelling and stuff. But that's exactly why it'll be nominated for all sorts of Oscars.
My favorite thing about this is as you talk and Teri's just shaking her head like, no. Because I think Teri liked Conclave. That's sort of the what I'm guessing from that. Go ahead, Teri.
Yeah, I think Conclave is fantastic. I think it does a wonderful job of placing where the Catholic Church is right now without being anti-Catholic and still allowing us to understand that this is a business institution and they are, it's a conclave. They are electing their new pope and what all those shenanigans mean in terms of people looking for power. And, you draw the correlations between, politics around the world and how this plays out. And I think they do a great job. And John Lithgow, Stanley Tucci, Ray Fiennes has never been better. I've never always loved Ray Fiennes, and I think he's actually pitched. There's a speech in Conclave that made the hair on my arm stand up.
Oh, I love everything about that. I don't trust you, Rad. I'm choosing to go with the Teri sort of assessment here.
You and the Academy, sir.
Rad, okay, I got a couple of minutes left here, and I think what Teri just said is important. The idea that this is the movie that speaks to the Catholic Church right now, like that's an interesting frame to me, because TIFF is more than just a place to see movies. It is this international festival that's going to give us sort of a lens into the world and the state of the world right now. How is this year's festival reflecting the moment that we're in, you think?
I mean, I think we saw the moment crash the festival's opening ceremony last night, right? Where you had pro-Palestinian protesters disrupt the opening night speeches. Yeah. And look, TIFF is I think a festival that you could expect more of that to happen throughout the festival, different protests, different events and stuff. Yeah. But and the thing is, the TIFF programming is in that conversation too. I mean, there's some fantastic films dealing with that. Like No Other Land is this,
Palestinian
really
documentary.
It's a documentary about settler violence in the West Bank that left me really infuriated and helpless. But it's also really beautiful. To a Land Unknown, gripping crime thriller about Palestinian refugees straight out of Gaza, out of what's happening now. It's literally being made in the last year. Same with on Ground Zero, which is literally 22 short films about what's happening in Gaza right now. And then the BB Files, which is a documentary that was announced at the last minute where they have police interrogation videos of Benjamin Netanyahu. That's screening on Monday. So TIFF is in the conversation. That's definitely going to be something we're going to be talking about throughout the festival. Yeah. And hopefully, I guess we're going to talk about it here.
Yeah, of course. I think, again, I just want to remind people, this is in fact the very beginning of all of our conversations we're going to be having about TIFF, because we are going to be seeing movies all over the next week. Probably not Night Bitch. I don't think that's going to happen for any of us. But there's more than 270 other movies for us to see, and so many other movies for us to talk about. Teri, we're talking about Bonjour how do you say it?
Tristesse.
Bonjour Tristesse, which is an adaptation of a novel that I saw and I really liked, and then you saw and you really liked. And so that means Rad is going to see it and hate it. And we're going to talk about that next week. I'm thrilled to be doing this with you. you, I just want to remind people, TIFF and 12 is going to be our daily podcast that we drop into the Commotion podcast feed starting on Monday for like the whole of next week. In the meantime, Teri and Rad, I got to leave it there, pals, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you again so much.
Thanks for having
guys.
me.
See you in the movies.
See you at the movies in like probably 10 minutes or so. Okay, Teri Hart is an entertainment reporter in Toronto. Rad Simonpillai is a film critic with CBC and CTV. The Toronto International Film Festival runs through September 15th. And yes, once again, you can hear Teri and Rad and I talk about all things festival. We're calling this podcast TIFF and 12. Listen to it every day starting on Monday. That is it for the show today. My name is Alamin Abdul Mahmoud. This show is called Commotion, and we'll see you next week.